The Way of Endurance. Samurai Wisdom on Facing Hardship. Close your eyes for a moment. Think about the hardest thing you have ever been through. Maybe it was a loss. Maybe it was a failure so complete it felt like the ground disappeared beneath your feet. Maybe it was a period of your life where you woke up every single morning not knowing how you were going to make it through the day. Now think about this. You survived it. Every single hard thing you have ever faced, you are still here. And that is not luck. That is something much deeper than luck. That is the oldest form of human strength. And today we're going to explore where that strength comes from. Through the eyes of the samurai. The samurai were warriors in feudal Japan who lived and died by a code called Bushido, the way of the warrior. But here's what most people get wrong about them. The samurai were not just fighters. They were philosophers. They were poets. They meditated every single morning. They wrote about love, loss, beauty, and the nature of time. And they developed, over centuries, one of the most sophisticated systems for dealing with hardship that the world has ever seen. A system so advanced that modern neuroscience and psychology are only now beginning to catch up. Part 1. Why hardship is not the enemy. Let me start with something that might feel uncomfortable. We live in a world that has declared war on difficulty. Every advertisement, every app, every product promises to make your life easier, faster, more comfortable. And on the surface, that sounds wonderful. But there is a hidden cost. When we remove all friction from life, we also remove the very mechanism that makes us stronger. Here's the science. In 2019, researchers at the University of California conducted a study on what they called post-traumatic growth. They found that people who had experienced significant hardship, illness, loss, failure, and had processed that hardship consciously reported higher levels of meaning, purpose, and psychological resilience than people who had lived relatively comfortable, undisturbed lives. The people who had suffered more were, in many measurable ways, doing better. The samurai already knew this 1,000 years ago. The foundational text of samurai philosophy, a book called the Hagakure, written by a warrior named Yamamoto Tsunetomo in the early 1700s, opens with a statement that stopped me cold the first time I read it. It says, "The way of the samurai is found in death." Now before you think that sounds dark or extreme, let me explain what that actually means, because it changed how I see everything. Tsunetomo was not telling his students to seek death. He was telling them to live as if death were already decided, to wake up every morning and say, I may not survive today, and therefore, every action I take today must matter. Every word I speak must be true. Every challenge I face must be met fully, because there is no tomorrow to fall back on. There is only this moment, and what I choose to do with it. And here's the remarkable thing. Modern psychology has actually tested this idea. A study published in Psychological Science in 2015 found that brief, intentional contemplation of mortality, just a few minutes of sitting quietly and thinking about the fact that your time is limited, significantly reduced participants' anxiety responses to daily stressors, not increased it, reduced it. Because when you accept that life is finite and uncertain, the small difficulties stop feeling catastrophic. The samurai were practicing evidence-based cognitive therapy 7 centuries before modern psychology existed. Considering that you will die, be resolved. Yamamoto Tsunetomo, Hagakure. Part 2. The Empty Mind. How the samurai conquered fear. I want to talk about fear for a moment, because fear is the real enemy. Not failure, not pain, not even death. Fear. Fear is the thing that stops us before we even begin. Fear is the voice that says, you are not ready, not good enough, not strong enough. And the samurai spent their entire lives learning to master it. They had a concept called Mushin. It translates to no mind or empty mind. And the goal of Mushin was not to stop thinking. It was to reach a state where thought and action became the same thing, where the gap between what you need to do and actually doing it disappeared completely. You can see it in the greatest athletes in the world. You can see it in surgeons operating under pressure. You can see it in musicians who have played a piece so many thousands of times that their hands know the music without their mind interfering. Neuroscientist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying this phenomenon. He called it the flow state. And what he found was astonishing. When people are in flow, when they are fully absorbed in a challenging task that matches their level of skill, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that generates self-doubt, self-criticism, and anxiety, goes quiet. Meanwhile, the parts of the brain responsible for pattern recognition, intuition, and precise motor control become dramatically more active. In flow, you're simultaneously more calm and more capable. The samurai were engineering this state through decades of practice. And here's the critical insight. Flow does not happen in comfort. Flow requires challenge. It requires that the task you're doing is hard enough to demand your full attention, but not so hard that it overwhelms you. The samurai understood this perfectly. This is why they trained at the edge of their ability, always pushing to the point where the practice was genuinely difficult, where failure was a real possibility. Because that edge is where the mind becomes silent. And when the mind becomes silent, something deeper takes over. There is nothing outside of yourself that can ever enable you to get better, stronger, richer, quicker, or smarter. Everything is within. Miyamoto Musashi. Part 3, the body is the mind. The samurai did not separate the training of the body from the training of the mind. They understood something that Western medicine is only beginning to fully appreciate. The body and mind are not two separate systems. They are one system. And what you do to one, you do to the other. One of the most striking samurai practices was called misogi, ritual purification through cold water. Warriors would stand under freezing mountain waterfalls for extended periods, sometimes hours, in winter, and this was not optional. This was fundamental training, because they knew, through direct experience, that the person who could stand in freezing water without breaking, without collapsing, without running away, was a different kind of person than the one who could not. A landmark study from Radboud University in the Netherlands followed subjects through a specific cold exposure training program. What they found was extraordinary. After just a few weeks of regular cold exposure, participants showed norepinephrine levels. Norepinephrine is the neurotransmitter responsible for focus, alertness, and critically, pain tolerance, up to 300% higher than baseline. 300%, and their immune system markers also improved dramatically. The samurai were not just toughening their minds, they were literally upgrading their brain chemistry through ancient ritual. But physical hardship training went even further than cold water. Samurai warriors practiced a single sword cut, the most basic downward strike, at least 1,000 times per day. Not 1,000 different techniques, 1,000 repetitions of one movement, every day, for years. And what that does to the nervous system is profound. Researcher Daniel Coyle explains in his book, The Talent Code, that the secret to deep skill is something called myelin, the white fatty substance that wraps around neural pathways in the brain. Every time you perform a correct repetition of a movement, a thought pattern, or a response to difficulty, myelin grows thicker around that neural pathway. Thicker myelin means faster, more precise, more automatic neural signals. The samurai who had performed 10,000 sword cuts had a nervous system that was fundamentally different from someone who had not. They had built hardware-level resilience directly into their biology.
It is not enough to know. You must apply. It is not enough to will. You must do. Miyamoto, Part 4. Accepting what you cannot control. There is a concept in Japanese culture called mono no aware. It means something like the bittersweet awareness of impermanence. The acknowledgement that everything beautiful is also temporary. That the cherry blossom is beautiful precisely because it falls. That the sunset is magnificent precisely because it ends. That the people we love most will one day be gone. And that this is not a tragedy. This is simply the nature of things. The samurai built their entire philosophy on this foundation. They did not resist impermanence. They leaned into it. They accepted it so completely that it stopped being a source of grief and became a source of freedom. Because when you truly accept that you cannot control outcomes, that you cannot stop loss, cannot prevent failure, cannot guarantee anything, something extraordinary happens. You stop wasting energy, fighting reality, and you start putting all of that energy into what you actually can control. Your response, research, published in the Journal of Positive Psychology in 2021, studied two groups of people facing identical stressors: job loss, relationship breakdown, health challenges. One group fought against what was happening, denied it, tried to control what could not be controlled. The other group acknowledged the reality of what was happening without judgment, and then decided how to respond. The acceptance group showed cortisol levels. Cortisol is the primary stress hormone that were on average 40% lower. They recovered faster. They made better decisions. They reported higher well-being even while in the middle of the difficult situation. The samurai philosophy was not passive. It was strategic. Accepting what you cannot change is how you conserve the energy needed to change what you can. Do not seek to follow in the footsteps of the wise. Seek what they sought. Matsuo Basho, Part 5. The discipline of falling and rising. There is a Japanese proverb that you have probably heard. Fall 7 times, stand up 8. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but the simplicity is deceptive. This proverb is not about optimism. It is not about believing that things will get better. It is about something far more fundamental. The decision to get up is independent of how you feel about getting up. The samurai did not train to feel brave. They trained to act correctly, regardless of how they felt. This is a crucial distinction. Most modern self-help tells you to change your feelings first, to get motivated, to feel confident, to believe in yourself, and then act. The samurai reversed this completely. Act first, feel second, because feelings follow action far more reliably than action follows feelings. Psychologist Angela Duckworth spent years studying what she calls grit, the combination of passion and perseverance for long-term goals. Breathe and ask yourself with genuine curiosity, what is this teaching me? Not, why is this happening to me? That question leads nowhere. But what is the specific skill, the specific quality of character that this situation is demanding of me right now? And then try to bring that quality fully into the moment. Today is victory over yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow is your victory over lesser men. Miyamoto Musa. Closing. The sword that sharpens in fire. There is a process in traditional Japanese sword making called tamahage that is the process by which raw iron ore is transformed into one of the strongest, sharpest, most beautiful objects ever created by human hands, the katana. And the process is violent. The ore is exposed to extreme heat. It is beaten, folded, beaten again. The impurities are forced out through the striking. The metal is folded thousands of times, and every strike, every fold, every exposure to fire makes the final blade not weaker, but stronger, more refined, more capable of holding an edge. You are the sword. Life is the forge, and the fire, the hardship, the loss, the failure, the difficulty. That is not the enemy. That is the process. That is what is making you into something extraordinary, if you let it. if you choose to stay in the fire long enough, if you choose to fall and rise and fall and rise. One more time, the samurai are gone. Their castles have turned to dust. Their swords rest quietly in museums. But the wisdom they left behind is not old. It is not historical. It is as urgent and alive as the moment you are living right now. Because hardship has not changed, and the human capacity to rise through it has not changed. The only thing that has changed is whether we choose to use it. Whatever you are carrying right now, carry it a little further. Whatever wall you are facing, take one more step toward it. Whatever fire you are standing in, let it do its work. Because on the other side of this, there is a version of you that could not have existed without it. And that version is worth becoming.